We have a big problem, and we need your help.
It's happening all around us.
To our partners, our siblings, and even our children.
It's called sexual assault, and it has to stop.
We have to stop it. So listen up.
Sexual violence can ruin lives. It's a crime no one should have to endure.
Rape is a choice men make, an action they take.
No one ever asks for it.
No one should force sex on anyone, ever.
When I hear a joke or someone being disrespectful, I speak up.
If I see it happening, I intervene.
I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
We need to take responsibility for male sexual violence.
It's on all of us to stop sexual assault before it happens.
All of us.
Welcome. We're really excited, and I'm very delighted to share this stage with these prominent men and to have this conversation. It's really a conversation I wish we should not have, but we have to have it because of what's taking place.
A lot of times I have chances and opportunities to speak to the kids, and a lot of what I talk to them about is a black belt or a championship, a world championship will take you so far, but none of that's going to matter if you're not willing to be a good human being, and how being a good human being with empathy and concern and compassion for other human beings around you will take you much farther in life and will create a life for you that will be much better than anything you could have imagined with just pursuing some goal of like a black belt or a championship. And I also like to try to remind them that every single person, not just the people on the mat and not just their coaches and the people around them or their family, but every single person is worthy of love, dignity, and respect.
You know, I think the role that I play in the community, or how I see the role that I would play here, is probably multifaceted. First and foremost, I'm a dad to two young kids. So as I try to bring them up and be around their friends and their sports teams and all the things as being a parent, I think it's teaching my son the right way to respect women, teaching my daughter how to stand up for herself. So there's a role I play as a parent. But as my role with the Santa Cruz Warriors, I think there's the employer side of it. We employ 30 to 40 people annually, and then another few hundred during the season. And I think the large percentage of those employees are younger professionals that maybe were their first or second job. So I think learning how to act in the workforce, learning how to be positive and contributing members to society and to the community. But in the workforce, you have a lot of young individuals that maybe they're just coming out of college, and that's a whole different dynamic of how they may have behaved then, and now teaching them how to be like positive contributors to society and to how to treat people in a professional setting and in a social setting. And the other side, I would just say the last one I would probably say is, we're a local sports team. We have a lot of young male athletes, and helping them learn how to become stronger men as individuals, how to treat not only the people that are on our own staff, whether that be males or females, but how to act when they are in the community. The fact that they are role models and they are people that the youth look up to and whatnot. So people see how they treat women and treat others. So I think, trying to figure out the different ways that I can be a mentor to them and help them kind of see and learn some of these things that we'll talk about tonight and that I've been fortunate enough to go through. But not everybody has had that type of training or talked about these things. So I view my role in a few different ways, and as somebody that's in the community in a lot of different aspects, being that positive bystander and helping to kind of emphasize some of the things that we'll talk more about is something that I hope to be able to do.
I like where Chris started with thinking as a father. I have two boys, a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, wanting to teach them what it means to show respect in every context, and I think also being a role model of that, making sure that my actions are representative of what I'm teaching them. I think about the role of education, and part of that is preparing young people for being, critical thinkers, to be active participants in this democracy, and also to be in touch, kind of have balance with their emotions, and be in balance when it comes to their relationships and the people that surround them and the environment. And so there's this kind of higher purpose that I think we aim for as teachers and as educators. And that really is what education is all about. And I think that's what most people who are involved in education really want, I also think that we have to bring awareness to the social determinants of health, the context that exists. Last night I was at a rosary for the young man who was shot in Watsonville. He was a 9th grader, and I got to be there with the family. He was one of our students in one of our alternative education schools, and when I walked out of the place where the rosary was taken, there was a group of young men that were there talking, and as I was walking, I was listening to things that they were talking about, and I just kind of thought of this as a context where this young man had grown up in, and the things that these folks were talking about was aggressive. They were thinking about, they were very angry, and they were showing their anger at people and at the world. And I was thinking about the young man who reminded me very much of my son and the context that he was living in. And I think, we often kind of blame individuals for, we think of something terrible that happens, and we think about the choices that a single individual makes. And of course, we're all responsible for our actions, but we're also responsible as a community for our collective actions. And how do we create a context where people feel safe, where people get the support they need, and we break those cycles of trauma, and we break those cycles of poverty. And they're in a place where it's fight or flight. This is their reality is one where they feel like their survival is about being a part of this cycle of violence. And I think we have such a responsibility to them to create the opportunity for them to break out of that, and to have a space where they can be themselves, and they can be boys, and they can and maybe we can break the cycle of violence that is plaguing us.
Thank you. The theme of fatherhood showed up. So when I started Mentors in 2017, I think 5 years ago, there was a movie that I watched that really pushed me from fatherhood work to gender specific, including boys and young men. And we'll see a sample of it today. But when I'm sitting in a classroom, which I did this morning with 12 boys at Lakeview Middle School, we were having a conversation about one of my boys used a language that was really inappropriate. So we were having a conversation about that. And it was amazing to see the support, accountability, and openness of the boys and having that space. I'm working and helping them to be the better version of themselves. And they're hungry for that. They're so hungry to sit with other men, with other boys, where they feel safe, to have a conversation of what they're seeing on TikTok. Is it appropriate or not? Or what their friend just told them, is that how you create a relationship with the girl? Or that's how you have an intimate friendship with a boy that doesn't have to be sexual. They're looking for answer, and they're alone, and where they get their information is online. And you all know, and I don't need to talk about it. So in my daily work, I have the opportunity to learn, to be curious myself as I'm teaching those young men, but I'm also reflecting back. Brandon and I were having a short conversation about our journey, how I got here. I'm a trained engineer, not a social worker, but this is my calling, and my calling keeps getting modified each time. And my hope is I do want to live in a world where there's no violence against kids, women, and families. Because what we see, like Faris said, is we have a lot of traumatized people. And when hurt people hurt others. So we got to start having a conversation of healing in addition to supporting them. So, man, I really thank you.
Stop crying. Stop with the tears.
Don't cry.
Pick yourself up. Stop with the emotion.
Don't be a pussy.
Don't let nobody disrespect you. Be cool and be kind of a dick.
Always keep your mouth shut. Nobody likes a tattletale.
Bros come before hoes.
Don't let your woman run your life.
You a bitch.
What a fag.
Get laid. Do something.
Be a man.
Be a man. Grow some balls.
The three most destructive words that every man receives when he's a boy is when he's told to be a man.
We've constructed an idea of masculinity in the United States that doesn't give young boys a way to feel secure in their masculinity, so we make them go prove it all the time.
Within their peer group culture, each of them is posturing based on how the other boys are posturing, and what they end up missing is what they each really want, which is just that closeness.
In good times, guys are like really close to each other, but when things get a little bit worse, you're on your own.
From middle school, I had 4 really close friends. Once I kind of went into high school, I struggle finding people I can talk to because I feel like I'm not supposed to get help.
Our kids get up every morning. They have to prepare their mask for how they're gonna walk to school. A lot of our students don't know how to take the mask off. What is it you don't let people see? Almost 90% of you have pain and anger on the back of that paper.
If you never cry, then you have all these feelings stuffed up inside of you, and then you can't get them out.
They really buy into a culture that doesn't value what we've feminized. If we're in a culture that doesn't value caring, doesn't value relationships, doesn't value empathy, you are going to have boys and girls, men and women go crazy.
I had anger issues in high school. I felt like an outcast.
I've been suspended at least once every year I was here.
We would just look for trouble and just like try to fight.
Boys are more likely to act out. They're more likely to become aggressive. Most people miss that as depression or see it as a conduct disorder or just a bad kid.
I felt like just giving up on life. You know, I actually had suicide thoughts in my head at 6th grade.
I felt alone for a long time, and I actually thought about killing myself.
Whether it's homicidal violence or suicidal violence, people resort to such desperate behavior only when they are feeling shamed and humiliated or feel they would be if they didn't prove that they were real men.
If you're told from day one, don't let nobody disrespect you, and this is the way you handle it as a man, respect is linked to violence.
If I can man up, why step down from that, you feel me?
It's like instinct.
So man up. Man up. Man up. Man up. Pull some fucking balls. Act like a man.
Be a man.
Be a man.
For my kids, I was gonna end this hyper-masculine narrative here.
Yeah, I'll start. I've recently started sharing that I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, and I think that for me, my need to be able to share that with folks is really in kind of rejecting the shame that I felt as a child, and I think that part of what makes it so much more difficult for men is just the stigma that goes with it. And I was fortunate in that once I talked to my parents, they acted quickly, but it was something that was never spoken about ever again. And there was this sense of shame and the stigma about it that one carries, right? And this internalization, just like those voices, we internalize a sense of self that of being broken or being at fault. And I think about my experience and how fortunate I was that I was, taken out, that the person that was hurting me was no longer able to do that. And I think often about the unspoken numbers of people that we know in our community that are experiencing that every day. And it's so much more exacerbated It happened during the pandemic when kids were spending more time at home, with families being doubled up, and so when I think about my experience and again, going back to our responsibility to create a context where we're taking responsibility for that not happening, creating a context where not only are we responding once it has happened, but not allowing it to happen in the first place. And I think about the systems that are reinforced that allow for that to happen, and it's I think part of my own experience has helped me be driven to want to work on creating safer schools and bring awareness, to talk about the fact that this is happening a lot more than we think, and it has increased significantly just in the last few years.
Thank you so much.
I guess I would say I feel very fortunate that I have not, or no one that I am in my family or whatnot have encountered sexual violence. So I don't have I've been thinking a lot about this question and trying to think about a story that I could share that would be relevant. And I guess for me, it would be just equating it to a story that's happened in the professional environment before I got to the Santa Cruz Warriors. So no speculation from the people that I know out there. But, I think we've had a situation in the past that I was a part of where not necessarily sexual violence, but more verbal harassment towards a female. And the individual at the time didn't want to create a big deal about it and wanted to brush it off and said it wasn't that important and don't worry about it. It's just guys being guys. And I think I was fortunate that I had been, supported by mentors in my career and whatnot, that we know how to act in these situations. We instantly get our people operations team involved. We go through a full investigation. Like, it's not something that, even if you think it's okay and that they didn't mean it that way, it's not how everybody takes it, right? I mean, the impact is not always the intention. And I think it's something that, we in this case went pretty hard and did a lot of investigating and went through it and ended up terminating the employee that made the comments. And of course, the victim felt bad, right? Which is never how that person should feel, for them being the one that was mistreated. But I think, for me, it's been in the professional sector more, where we've had to kind of really, in the sports culture, in the athletes, we talk about locker room talk, all these things. Things come up, things get said, and I think it's incumbent upon us to continue to stand out and speak up all the time about it's unacceptable to say things that are, derogatory or whatnot towards women or towards others. So I think I've had personal experience in the professional setting, but fortunate enough that I haven't had those experiences in my personal life.
Okay. Brandon?
Man, that's a heavy question.
It is. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I want to have an honest conversation, so I want to be as open about it as possible. Man, I've never told very many people, and in fact, my parents don't even know. So, but I've experienced that as a child when I was younger. I've recently been able to actually talk about it a little bit more. But it's definitely something that's affected me in every aspect of me, making me feel, weak, or making it really hard sometimes to have intimate relationships with people because of stuff that I still never really unpacked. But more than just me, in my own personal experience, it's something that has occurred all around me. And in fact, the majority of the women that are in my life, I don't know one of them that hasn't dealt with some sort of assault situation in their entire lives, including, all of my family and my cousins and mother, that kind of thing. And one thing that really shook me was when I was about 20 years old. I was about to turn 20, and this happened about 20 years ago. I had a friend who was in a relationship with a very abusive partner, and he shot and killed her, and then killed himself. And that really affected me to a point where it was like, well, I could blame him. I could blame his drug use. I could blame the fact that he had access to guns. But it all basically came down to his fear and his mental health and the way that he perceived his life and the way he perceived relationships and his dominance over the people in his life and his control over the people in his life. And once he was losing that control, that's when he decided to become irreversibly violent. And that in itself has affected my life still to this day. You know, it's I still have a picture of her up in my locker when I go to teach. And part of that is because I want to remember what I'm doing this for and why I'm teaching and why I'm putting my heart into these things. I didn't ever go to school or try to train to get this kind of position. It was just something that kind of presented itself. And I remember working for the school district in the self-defense programs. And one of the things that they had us doing more than just showing technique, but was talking to the boys, me having conversations with the boys about being respectful men in their communities and being respectful towards women in the way that they treated the women in their lives. And I remember it was one of the first days, and they gave me a script, and I remember reading a story, and they could care less. They were snoozing, they weren't paying attention. And I remember approaching the instructor and being like, can I share more intimate from my heart, from my own life? And once I was able to do that, I was able to really get through to some of these kids, because either they had experienced that in themselves or they'd experienced it vicariously through their family members and stuff like that. And once I was able to really kind of open up that conversation and let them ask me questions and respond completely 100% wholeheartedly honest, I really felt like I was making a difference in the way that they viewed their role in society and the way they viewed their role with their intimate partners. And I remember after a few of those classes, just the instructor asking me, like, how do you feel about this? And I was born to do this. All these things that I had to experience, all these losses, all this pain, abuse, all that stuff that I had to watch other people endure, not just myself, was what made me ready to be a person that could sit and talk and have those conversations, because I had lived it and I'd seen it and experienced it myself.
Yeah. Thank you to both of you and Chris as well. We, as 4 grown men, we're still. Faris is courageous enough to share what he has. So is Brandon. I'm still working on it. But someday I have the courage to do what you did tonight. Thank you. Gentlemen, if you have anything you want to add, I want to create space.
I just feel fortunate you guys are very impressive. All 3 of you, super impressive individuals.
Sometimes in education and other systems, we're guilty of focusing on kind of the biggest, most salient problem. We're worried about school shootings, so we're preparing for school shootings, or we're worried about violence in the neighborhood, and I think that what we're talking about is the need for a more kind of a long-term solution that would have to be family-based. And one of the programs that we work with is Triple P, which is a positive parenting program, and it's really a therapeutic approach to family dynamics. And they've had great results. And there's a lot of, programs that have come and gone and have been ineffective, the scared straight type programs, if, you go down this path. And I think the later you start, we know that, by the time we're talking to students in high school, a lot of the behaviors and the patterns and the trends have already kind of cemented themselves, and it's more work. It takes a lot more. And I think starting earlier is really necessary.
But I also want to make sure we're all realizing that it's everyone in this room. It's everyone from 18 to 80. I mean, it's incumbent upon all of us to help solve and improve this situation by stopping and being able to say, stop the microaggressions, stop the comments that get made, stand up, make a comment, call out your buddy for saying something. I think we all have to kind of find that courage to stand up and be that engaged bystander so that we don't just sit idly by and watch these things get said or done.
Agree.
And we take a very active approach in that.
Absolutely.
Nothing can be changed except ourselves. And it's up to each and every one of us, if we don't like something that we see in society, to change that in ourselves and try to be the example and the exception. And hopefully people can see that and internalize that for themselves and see that that takes a lot of strength to do that.
Thank you, Brandon. Chris?
I just want to say thanks to, obviously the people that put this on, to our other panelists, to yourself, but to all you in attendance. I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot in the last hour plus from these individuals. And that'd be the one ask that I would have is always keep trying to learn. Like we definitely don't have all the answers. You got to continue to seek out education and learn and get better and continue to evolve in this space and many others in terms of social justice and how we get better as people. But I think just continue to find ways to try to become more educated and more well-read in these spaces will allow us to best impact each other and ourselves.
Thank you.
Whether we're survivors or we are teachers, or we are working or teaching jiu-jitsu or running an amazing basketball organization and running a mentoring program, there's just so much love and care that exists here. And our future is bright, and we need to embrace each other and support each other, and be able to continue moving forward in a positive way.
Thank you, Faris. Few thoughts. Education is important, so we got to educate ourselves. All of us learn tonight from each other. We didn't show up as an expert, but we're going to leave a little bit brighter and knowledgeable. We got to speak up, like Chris said. You see it, you got to call it out. If you can do it from a kind, connected way, it will go a long way. Challenge toxic masculinity. Have that conversation again, because I think it's the behavior could be changed. Be an ally and lead by example. I hope we're doing that. We invite you to do the same. And I want to thank the Commission for the Prevention of Violence Against Women. I am a hope dealer. That's what I do in my job. Thank you. Have a good night.